Welcome to InfoStream, your daily current. Unsure what to listen to? Turn to us for today's headlines. Stay informed. Texas Democrats protest redistricting efforts. Trump-Modi relations face challenges regarding Russian oil. Clinton investigation expands with congressional subpoenas. Kremlin and US engage in ceasefire discussions. US redirects vaccine funding, creating safety concerns. Hiroshima commemorates 80 years of nuclear tensions. Trump's tariffs threaten global and US economies. Taiwanese TV sparks invasion fears. Trump-Russia probe continues with grand jury investigation. Rwanda accepts migrants deployed by the US. UN warns of Gaza operations' catastrophic consequences. UK faces economic headwinds with tax increases. Russian attacks on Ukraine have doubled since Trump's inauguration. Chinese migrants experience diminishing hope due to instability. Texas Democrats walkout over redistricting attempt. Several news articles detail Texas Democrats' strategic walkout in response to the Republican-led state legislature's attempt to redraw congressional districts mid-decade. A highly unusual and politically motivated move designed to benefit Donald Trump and potentially secure a GOP majority in the House of Representatives. The walkout, involving dozens of state legislators, aims to prevent the passage of the new map by the December deadline required for its use in the 2026 midterms. The tactic draws parallels to previous walkouts in states like Oregon, Minnesota, and Indiana, with a mixed historical record. The core argument centers on the GOP's transparent effort to eliminate Democratic representation and bolster Trump's chances. The move highlights a broader gerrymandering arms race, where states strategically manipulate district boundaries to favor their political party. Public opinion overwhelmingly views gerrymandering as a major problem, with 65% of Americans expressing concern, including 78% of Democrats and 56% of Republicans. The Texas situation is particularly notable due to its mid-decade nature, a rare occurrence. The Democrats' strategy hinges on framing the Republican action as a blatant political power grab. Poll data suggests public support for the walkout is likely, given the widespread disapproval of gerrymandering. Notably, Republican-leaning voters are more accepting of gerrymandering when their party is involved. Pew Research Center data indicates that fewer Americans actively follow redistricting efforts, but those who do are more likely to support the walkout if it aligns with their political views. The historical precedent of walkouts in other states offers mixed signals, with some successful in achieving concessions, while others fizzled due to legislators' rapid returns. The Texas situation is considered particularly critical given the potential impact on the 2026 midterms and the GOP's strategic goals. The Democrats' success will depend on effectively communicating the urgency and gravity of the situation to garner broader public support and potentially influence legislative outcomes. Trump-Modi ties deteriorate over Russian oil trade. President Donald Trump has dramatically escalated tensions with India, imposing a 50% tariff on all goods imported from the nation in response to India's continued purchases of Russian oil. This represents a significant shift in the US-India relationship. Previously characterized by ambitious trade goals, the initial 25% tariff, set to take effect Thursday, is joined by a subsequent 25% tariff targeting India, specifically for importing Russian oil, actions the U.S. deems detrimental to efforts to counter Russia's war in Ukraine. The imposition of these tariffs follows a series of escalating statements from Trump, who accused India of not caring how many people in Ukraine are being killed by the Russian war machine. India has defended its actions, citing market factors and the need to ensure energy security for its 1.4 billion population, explaining that its imports from Russia were driven by the redirection of European supplies following the conflict. The move signifies a strategic realignment by Trump, utilizing secondary sanctions, penalties applied to countries supporting Russia, a tactic previously employed against China. The U.S. trade deficit with India has nearly doubled since Trump's first term, reflecting a growing reliance on India as a manufacturing hub, particularly for Apple's iPhone production. India's imports from the U.S. include oils, chemicals, and aerospace products, while exports to the U.S. consist of pharmaceuticals, communications equipment, and apparel. The potential impact of the 50% tariffs on Indian goods is substantial, with analysts predicting a 40–50% reduction in U.S.-bound exports. Following Trump's announcement, India's Ministry of External Affairs vowed to take all actions necessary to protect its national interests and economic security, hinting at potential retaliatory tariffs. The situation is further complicated by ongoing diplomatic efforts, including meetings between Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff and Russian President Vladimir Putin. The escalating trade dispute underscores a fundamental disagreement regarding the U.S.'s approach to the Ukraine conflict and highlights the challenges of maintaining strong alliances in the face of geopolitical tensions. The long-term consequences of this trade war remain uncertain, but it undoubtedly represents a major setback in the US-India relationship. Clinton investigation intensifies as Congress subpoenas key figures. The House Oversight Committee, led by Chairman James Comer, has subpoenaed Bill and Hillary Clinton, alongside 8 other individuals, as part of its ongoing investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's activities. This move follows President Donald Trump's administration's previous decision not to release extensive investigative files related to Epstein. The subpoenas target individuals within the Justice Department across multiple administrations, including former Attorney Generals Jeff Sessions, William Barr, FBI Directors James Comey and Robert Mueller. The committee's actions signal a continued pressure for information from the Trump administration. Victims of Jeffrey Epstein and his co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell have expressed deep concern over the potential legitimization of Maxwell's case, particularly following her recent transfer to a lower security federal prison camp in Texas and a meeting with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Lawyers representing the victims argue that this move is extraordinarily insensitive and suggests ulterior motives. They are urging a judge to deny the Trump administration's motion to unseal grand jury transcripts. The victims' legal team, led by Brad Edwards and Paul Castle, voiced concerns that the Justice Department failed to consult with them before Maxwell's transfer or the filing of motions to unseal the transcripts. They argue this demonstrates a disregard for the victims' well-being and fears that Maxwell could benefit from a potential pardon or commutation of her sentence. The legal team highlights that Epstein escaped justice through his apparent suicide, and Maxwell is now attempting to evade justice. Ghislaine Maxwell herself has argued that her legal interests outweigh the public's interest in the case, urging the judge to deny the release of the transcripts. Her attorney, David Oscar Marcus, contends that releasing incomplete, untested testimony would cause irreparable reputational harm. The Trump administration is currently debating releasing transcripts of Blanche's interview with Maxwell. The legal battle over the grand jury transcripts underscores the ongoing complexities and sensitivities surrounding the Epstein investigation, with victims fearing further exploitation and the potential erosion of accountability. Kremlin and US discuss ceasefire amidst growing tensions. Recent discussions between US envoy Steve Witkoff and Russian President Vladimir Putin, alongside ongoing diplomatic efforts, highlight the complex and stalled negotiations surrounding the conflict in Ukraine. Both sides acknowledge constructive dialogue, but significant disagreements persist, particularly regarding Russia's preconditions for peace. The US, under President Donald Trump, is pushing for a ceasefire by Friday, threatening substantial sanctions against Russia and its trading partners, most notably India, for continued oil purchases. Trump's frustration with the lack of progress is evident, stemming from repeated attacks on Ukrainian cities and a perceived lack of tangible results despite numerous talks. Zelensky expressed gratitude for the productive discussions with Trump, focusing on sanctions, defense cooperation, and drone production. He also addressed the increased brutality of Russian strikes. The Kremlin has largely dismissed Trump's sanctions threat, citing the Russian economy's resilience to previous sanctions. Despite Trump's initial claims of a swift resolution, Putin has repeatedly cautioned against unrealistic expectations. The US has approved an additional $200 million in military aid to Ukraine, including plans for weapons sales to NATO members which will then be distributed to Kyiv. Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, and Sweden are slated to be the first recipients. Multiple rounds of talks between Ukraine and Russia in Istanbul have failed to achieve a breakthrough, with each side's conditions remaining unacceptable. Casualties continue to mount, with 6 deaths reported in eastern Ukraine over the past day. The situation remains volatile, with ongoing attacks from both sides and a lack of a clear path towards a lasting ceasefire. Trump's impatience and the continued bombardment underscore the deep-seated nature of the conflict and the considerable challenges to achieving a resolution. The US is attempting to leverage economic pressure, while Russia maintains its strategic objectives, resulting in a tense and protracted standoff. US shifts vaccine funding, raising safety doubts. The US government, under the leadership of Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is dramatically altering its approach to vaccine development, specifically by canceling $500 million in funding for mRNA vaccine projects. This move, impacting companies like Moderna and Pfizer, stems from Kennedy's long-standing skepticism regarding mRNA vaccine safety and efficacy. The decision reflects a broader overhaul of US health policy, including the dismissal of a vaccine advisory committee and a renewed focus on alternative vaccine platforms. The core of the shift involves terminating 22 vaccine development investments spearheaded by the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authorities of BARDA. Kennedy argues that the data demonstrate these vaccines fail to effectively protect against upper respiratory infections, such as COVID-19 and influenza. He intends to redirect this funding toward safer, broader vaccine platforms that remain effective despite viral mutations. This strategy highlights a concern that mRNA vaccines, while rapidly developed, may not be the optimal solution for long-term protection. The cancellation impacts projects including Moderna's mRNA bird flu vaccine, revealed in May, alongside numerous other initiatives. The decision underscores a fundamental difference in opinion regarding vaccine technology. While pioneers Katalin Karikó and Drew Weissman were awarded the 2023 Nobel Prize for their work, Kennedy's administration questions their effectiveness and prioritizes different approaches. Kennedy's actions have been met with criticism from experts who emphasize the crucial role mRNA vaccines played in mitigating the COVID-19 pandemic, estimating nearly 6 million lives were saved through the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine alone. However, Kennedy maintains that the technology's limitations outweigh its benefits. He has initiated a new study on the long-debunked link between vaccines and autism, further solidifying his stance. The shift represents a significant departure from previous administration policies, particularly Operation Warp Speed, which accelerated the development of mRNA vaccines. The move reflects a broader transformation in U.S. health policy, prioritizing alternative vaccine platforms and questioning established scientific consensus. Hiroshima marks 80th anniversary amid rising nuclear tensions. As Japan commemorated the 80th anniversary of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, concerns escalated regarding the resurgence of nuclear threats and the instability of the global security landscape. The event underscored the enduring legacy of the tragedy and highlighted the continued relevance of lessons learned from World War II. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba addressed the ceremony, warning of an accelerating trend toward military buildup globally, citing Russia's invasion of Ukraine and broader regional conflicts. He emphasized the need to uphold the principles of peace-building amidst heightened tensions. The ceremony, attended by representatives from over 120 nations, including Taiwan and Palestine for the first time, served as a poignant reminder of the human cost of nuclear warfare. The dwindling number of Hiroshima survivors, known as hibakusha, represented through the Nobel Peace Prize-winning organization Nihon Hidankyo, played a central role, sharing their harrowing experiences and advocating for a nuclear-free world. There are currently 9,930 hibakusha, with an average age of 86. The event coincided with the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists' doomsday clock being moved to 89 seconds to midnight, the closest it has ever been. This decision reflects the growing anxieties surrounding nuclear proliferation and the weakening of arms control agreements. Over 12,000 nuclear warheads are currently held by 9 nations, with the United States and Russia accounting for approximately 90%. Many of these nations are actively modernizing their arsenals, further fueling concerns. Recent events, such as U.S. President Donald Trump's reported orders for nuclear submarine deployments following a diplomatic exchange with Russia, and ongoing tensions surrounding Iran's nuclear program, have amplified these anxieties. The conflict between India and Pakistan over Kashmir also contributed to the heightened sense of danger. The commemoration served as a call to action, urging international cooperation to prevent another nuclear catastrophe and reinforce the commitment to disarmament. The event's timing underscores the urgency of addressing the escalating nuclear risks and safeguarding humanity from potential annihilation. Trump's secondary tariffs threaten global economy and U.S. businesses. President Donald Trump's plan to compel a ceasefire in Ukraine by imposing 100% tariffs on countries continuing to purchase Russian oil is generating significant concern about its potential impact on the global economy and American businesses. The core strategy involves targeting countries like India and China, major buyers of Russian crude, with the aim of reducing Moscow's revenue streams and forcing a negotiated settlement. The immediate consequences center around potential price increases for consumers in the United States. Tariffs on Chinese goods, already at 30%, could escalate significantly, driving up the cost of consumer products, including electronics and apparel. Similarly, tariffs on Indian imports, particularly iPhones, would likely double prices for U.S. consumers. Economists predict that the tariffs could lead to higher global oil prices, given Russia's substantial crude exports, approximately 7 million barrels per day. Kieran Tompkins, a commodities economist at Capital Economics, anticipates an upside risk to oil prices, noting Russia's contribution to global consumption. This would impact the U.S., a significant importer of crude oil. Several countries are particularly vulnerable. India currently receives 36% of its crude oil from Russia, while China's imports have risen to 13.5%. Trump has specifically vowed to very substantially raise tariffs on India, citing its appetite for Russian oil. However, the feasibility of Trump's plan is debated. Critics argue that Russia's sheer size as an oil producer makes it difficult to replace its exports entirely. Clayton Seigel, a senior fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, believes that even high tariffs would be perceived as a bluff, given the difficulty of replacing Russia's oil supply. Furthermore, past experience suggests that Trump may not sustain draconian tariffs. Siegel suggests lower levels of 10–30% tariffs would carry more weight and encourage diversification. The potential for China to quickly reduce its reliance on Russian oil is also a factor. The situation highlights the interconnectedness of the global economy and the potential for trade disputes to ripple across borders. The US-EU trade relationship is also facing increased scrutiny, with the EU already subject to a 15% tariff on exports to the US. The overall impact remains uncertain, but the threat of secondary tariffs represents a significant risk to global economic stability and American businesses. Taiwanese TV show fuels invasion fears a complex political landscape, yet two separate news stories detail the launch and immediate impact of Zero-Day Attack, a new Taiwanese television series exploring a hypothetical Chinese invasion scenario. The first article focuses on a U.S. Department of Justice investigation revealing the illegal export of NVIDIA AI chips to China by California-based company ALX Solutions, led by Chuan Zheng and Shui Yang. The company, operating without licenses, shipped millions of dollars worth of chips through Singapore and Malaysia, highlighting concerns about illicit technology transfers and potential breaches of U.S. export controls. The case underscores the escalating tensions between the U.S. and China regarding technological advancements. The second article examines the broader political ramifications of Zero-Day Attack. The series, partially funded by the Taiwanese government and featuring government support, has ignited considerable debate. Critics, particularly from the Kuomintang Party, accuse the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, led by President William Lai, of using the show to stoke fear and advance political goals, labeling it as selling dried mangoes. The show's realistic depiction of a potential invasion, including elements mirroring current political divisions and the failed recall vote, has amplified anxieties about China's intentions. Zero-Day Attack reflects growing concerns about China's increasing use of gray zone warfare, including repeated incursions into Taiwan's airspace and waters. While most Taiwanese do not believe an imminent invasion is likely, the show's popularity demonstrates a heightened awareness of the potential threat. The DPP's support for the series and its portrayal of a potential invasion align with Lai's stance on Taiwan's independence. The U.S. has repeatedly warned of China's military buildup and potential invasion timeline by 2027, further intensifying the debate surrounding Taiwan's security. The show's impact on upcoming political events, including the second recall vote, is also being closely observed. The complex interplay of geopolitical tensions, technological concerns, and domestic political dynamics has made a Zero-Day Attack a central point of discussion within Taiwan and internationally. Trump-Russia probe grand jury investigation ordered. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi has initiated legal proceedings to investigate allegations surrounding the claim that political opponents of Donald Trump conspired to falsely accuse him of collusion with Russia during the 2016 presidential campaign. Prosecutors will now present evidence to a grand jury, a group of citizens tasked with determining whether formal charges should be filed. The specific charges and individuals involved remain unclear at this time. This action follows persistent claims by Trump that he was the victim of a years-long coup, orchestrated by former President Barack Obama and his national security team, alleging the politicization of intelligence regarding Russian interference. Trump's reaction to Gabbard's claims included accusations of treason, while Obama's spokesperson dismissed the assertion as bizarre. Despite these renewed allegations, established intelligence assessments from January 2017, as well as a 2020 bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee report, firmly concluded that Russia had actively sought to damage Hillary Clinton's campaign and bolster Trump's chances. The Mueller investigation, conducted during the first half of Trump's presidency, ultimately found no evidence of coordination between Trump or his campaign and the Kremlin, and no criminal charges were filed. Adding to the complexity, former CIA Director John Brennan and former FBI Director James Comey are currently under criminal investigation, stemming from reports linking them to the Trump-Russia probe. Both individuals have vehemently denied any wrongdoing, accusing Trump of undermining the justice system. The ongoing investigation underscores the persistent controversy surrounding the allegations and the continued scrutiny of Trump's actions and claims during his presidency. The The potential involvement of a grand jury signifies a significant escalation in the scrutiny of this long-standing issue. Rwanda to accept up to 250 migrants deployed by the US. The United States has reached an agreement with Rwanda to accept up to 250 migrants, a development stemming from the Trump administration's efforts to remove undocumented individuals. Rwanda, under the terms of the deal, will provide these migrants with workforce training, health care, and accommodation to facilitate their integration within the country. A crucial element of the agreement grants Rwanda the authority to individually assess and approve each migrant proposed for resettlement, ensuring a level of control over the process. The White House, while not directly commenting, has expressed ongoing discussions with nations willing to assist in the removal of individuals they perceive as having infiltrated the U.S. under the previous administration. Previously, the U.K. had committed $240 million to Rwanda, including the construction of facilities intended for housing asylum seekers. However, the current status of these facilities remains unclear. While an unnamed Rwandan official indicated the U.S. would provide an unspecified grant, this confirmation is yet to be officially announced. Concerns have been raised by human rights experts regarding the practice of sending migrants to a third country, potentially violating international law. Rwanda's human rights record has been previously scrutinized, raising fears of potential redeportations to dangerous locations. Despite these concerns, Rwanda maintains its ability to offer a secure environment for migrants. The government has faced criticism for supporting the M23 rebel group in the Democratic Republic of Congo, a claim Rwanda denies. Notably, a ceasefire deal signed in June by Rwanda and the DRC represents an ongoing peace process aimed at resolving 3 decades of instability in the region. The US and Rwanda are currently engaged in diplomatic efforts, and further details regarding the implementation of the migrant resettlement program are expected to be released as negotiations progress. The situation highlights the complex geopolitical dynamics surrounding migration and international relations. Ghana helicopter crash claims lives of ministers and others. A military helicopter carrying Ghanaian ministers of defense and environment, along with 6 other individuals, crashed in the Ashanti region of Ghana on Wednesday. The aircraft, departing from Accra at 09:12 local time GMT, was en route to Obuasi to address the issue of illegal mining. Initial reports indicated the helicopter had gone off the radar shortly after takeoff. The tragic incident resulted in the deaths of Defense Minister Edward Oman Boma and Environment, Science and Technology Minister Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed, both prominent figures in the Mahama administration. Other fatalities included Deputy National Security Coordinator Alhaji Muniru Mohammed, former Agriculture Minister, and Samuel Sarpong, Vice Chairman of the National Democratic Congress. The crew members, Squadron Leader Peter Bafemi Anala, Flying Officer Manintwam Ampadu, and Sergeant Ernest Addo Mensah, were also among the deceased. Chief of Staff Julius Debra described the crash as a national tragedy and ordered the country's flags to fly at half-mast, extending condolences to the servicemen who perished in service. President Mahama expressed his emotional distress, stating he was down emotionally. Edward Oman Boma previously served as communications minister and had been actively involved in tackling jihadist activity in Burkina Faso's northern border region. Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed had been a leading voice in combating illegal gold mining, known locally as Galamsey, a practice severely damaging the environment and polluting waterways, a significant concern during Mahama's presidential campaign. The investigation into the cause of the crash is underway, but the event represents a significant loss for Ghana. UN official warns of catastrophic consequences of expanded Gaza operations. A top United Nations official, Assistant Secretary General Miroslav Jenda, has issued a stark warning regarding Israel's reported plans to expand its military operations within Gaza, asserting that such a move carries catastrophic consequences for both Palestinians and Israeli hostages held by Hamas. Following reports of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's intention to pursue a total reoccupation of the Gaza Strip, Jenda characterized the prospect as deeply alarming. The potential expansion would significantly endanger the lives of an estimated millions of Palestinians and further jeopardize the safety of the remaining hostages. Israeli media indicates Netanyahu intends to discuss this strategy with his security cabinet, scheduled to meet this Thursday. The proposed action stems from a recent failure in ceasefire negotiations and potentially aims to bolster support from Netanyahu's right-wing coalition. U.S. President Donald Trump has stated that the decision ultimately rests with Israel. Currently, Israeli forces control approximately 75% of Gaza. The proposed full reoccupation would encompass the entire region, including areas populated by over 2 million Palestinians. This plan has ignited considerable division within Israel, with reports suggesting opposition from the army chief and other military leaders. The unnamed Israeli official dismissed these concerns, stating that the army chief should consider resignation if he disagrees with the strategy. The situation is further complicated by growing international pressure on Israel due to the unfolding humanitarian crisis in Gaza, with experts citing the imminent threat of famine. Gentha emphasized that under international law, Gaza must remain an integral part of a future Palestinian state. The proposed expansion represents a significant escalation with potentially devastating ramifications, highlighting the urgent need for a negotiated solution and the protection of civilian lives. UK economic outlook, tax increases and budget challenges. The UK's economic situation is facing significant challenges, according to recent analysis by the National Institute of Economic and Social Research, NIESR, and commentary surrounding Chancellor Rachel Reeves' upcoming autumn budget. NIESR's pessimistic forecast, reflecting Treasury scenarios, highlights a substantial budget shortfall, estimated at the $41.2 billion, necessitating tax increases to meet Reeves' borrowing targets. The shortfall stems from weakening economic growth, reduced tax revenue, and the partial reversal of previously planned welfare cuts, which now save less than originally anticipated. NIESR argues for a large buffer to reassure investors and potentially reduce borrowing costs, suggesting a moderate but sustained rise in taxes as a key element. Potential tax increases include reforms to VAT, pensions allowances, and extending the freeze on income tax thresholds. The Chancellor's trilemma, balancing spending commitments, manifesto promises against tax increases, and borrowing limits, is increasingly complex. The Labour Party, while advocating for avoiding tax rises on working people, acknowledges the need for increased revenue. Shadow Chancellor Sir Mel Stride criticized Labour's economic mismanagement, pointing to the inevitability of higher taxes. NIESR's projections indicate modest economic growth, 1.3% in 2025 and 1% in 2026, placing the UK in the middle of the G7 economies, a contrast to the IMF's more optimistic forecasts. Further complicating matters are external factors, including trade policy uncertainty related to US President Donald Trump's actions and the impact of rising national insurance contributions for employers. NIESR recommends prioritizing policies to promote growth and productivity, particularly addressing the decline in living standards for the poorest 10% of the population. Suggestions include reforming council tax or implementing a land value tax. The government maintains that economic growth is the best path to strengthening public finances, while Labour continues to express concern about the consequences of Reeves' current strategy. The autumn budget is anticipated to be a pivotal moment, potentially marking the most significant budget of this parliament. Russian attacks on Ukraine double since Trump inauguration. Since Donald Trump's return to the White House in January, Russian attacks on Ukraine have more than doubled, presenting a significant escalation in the ongoing conflict. Analysis by BBC Verify reveals a dramatic increase in drone and missile launches, coinciding with Trump's election victory and subsequent attempts to negotiate a ceasefire. Data from the Ukrainian Air Force shows 2,758 munitions were fired between January 19th and July 19th, compared to 11,614 launched during Biden's final 6 months in office. The White House, through spokesperson Anna Kelly, attributes the increased attacks to perceived incompetence by the Biden administration and aims to pressure Russia towards a settlement by threatening sanctions and selling weapons to NATO allies. However, Trump's decision to pause weapons deliveries twice, reversed later, has reportedly emboldened Moscow. Senator Chris Coons warns that Trump's approach has convinced Putin that it has the freedom to escalate attacks, particularly targeting civilian infrastructure like hospitals and the power grid. Russia's military production has surged dramatically. Ukraine's military intelligence agency, UR, reports a monthly ballistic missile production increased to 85 missiles and a daily production of 170 Giran drones, significantly boosted by a massive manufacturing facility at Alabuga, which now produces 9 times more units than initially projected. These attacks, coupled with a reduction in U.S. interceptor missile supplies, have made Ukraine vulnerable to attacks. Trump has demanded a ceasefire by August 8th and has since reversed the pauses on weapons supplies, agreeing to sell weapons to NATO members who will then supply them to Kiev. Justin Bronk, a military analyst, highlights the impact of these restrictions. The growing attacks have prompted renewed calls for increased Patriot anti-air battery supplies, which cost approximately $1 billion each. The situation is further complicated by Russia's increased stockpiles and the proliferation of domestically produced drones like the Giran 2. Dasha Volk, a journalist living in Kiev, describes the constant threat of attacks and the impact on daily life. The increased production of missiles and drones, coupled with the vulnerabilities created by reduced U.S. supplies, represents a critical challenge for Ukraine's defense. Chinese migrants face diminishing hope amidst political instability. A growing number of Chinese nationals are undertaking perilous journeys to the United States, driven by a desire for greater freedom and economic opportunity, but increasingly facing disillusionment due to political instability and an uncertain future. Many, like Pan, a former farmer from Jiangxi province, arrive via Latin America, often enduring significant hardship and financial strain. Pan, now working in a Barstow restaurant, represents a common experience, struggling to adapt to a new environment, burdened by language barriers, and reliant on precarious gig work. His story highlights the challenges faced by these migrants, who often lack social support and experience heightened anxiety due to the unpredictable nature of immigration enforcement. James, hailing from Western China, offers a contrasting narrative, embracing a more entrepreneurial approach. After a stint in U.S. immigration detention, he transformed his experience into a livelihood as a delivery driver in Palm Springs, showcasing a resilience and adaptability. However, both men, along with many others, are acutely aware of the growing threat posed by President Donald Trump's policies, including intensified ICE raids and rising U.S.-China tensions. The constant fear of deportation and the unpredictable nature of U.S.-China relations are fueling a sense of unease and uncertainty. The migrants' precarious legal status, holding employment authorization documents, CADs, but lacking asylum status, exacerbates their vulnerability. The ongoing raids and the administration's aggressive deportation policies have created a climate of paranoia, prompting many to question the viability of the American dream. Kevin, a migrant from Fujian province, exemplifies this disillusionment, stating that America, to me, feels like it's becoming another China. The migrants' experiences underscore a broader trend, the diminishing hope among these individuals. Despite their efforts and sacrifices, they find themselves caught in a pincer facing both the difficulties of adapting to a new culture and the looming threat of political instability. The persistent anxieties surrounding U.S.-China relations and the unpredictable nature of immigration enforcement are forcing many to reconsider their decision to leave China, raising serious questions about the future of this growing population of Chinese migrants in the United States.